everyone. This is James Templeton with the Templeton Wellness Foundation, and I am here with Kathy Bero today, and she has quite a story, and she's going to share it with us. And she's living up there in Wisconsin, and on a beautiful day today, and it's wonderful to have her with me today to tell us all about, her background and her story and the things that she did. And welcome, Kathy. It's great to be with you today.
Thank you so much, James. I'm really grateful to be on your, do we call these video casts or podcasts or?
Whatever. We're going to call it good information. And
good information.
And you have quite a story. And can you tell us a little bit about your cancer diagnosis and then, all that good stuff?
Sure. Well, back in 2005 in October, 6 months before that, I had a clean mammogram, and I got sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker. I went to doctor after doctor after doctor. Nobody could tell me what was wrong. Everything was sort of checking out. And one day, my horse, Simon, he was pressing at my chest. So that was significant for me because at that time my kids were age 2 and 7, and when I was pregnant with my 7-year-old, he told me I was pregnant because according to the doctors, I shouldn't have been able to get pregnant. And so all of a sudden he was real snuggly at my belly, and I thought, what is going on? And then I realized I missed my period. I thought, could this be? My husband and I had been married 12 years, and so I took a pregnancy test, and yes, I was pregnant. And then he did the same thing with my second child, but this time he was pressing more aggressively, like kind of being bratty, And I thought, what is going on? And the doctors just kept telling me, you're healthy, you're strong, you're all these things. You had a little staph infection from a bug bite, maybe. Mm-hmm. That's bringing you down. And I got out of the shower one night, and I saw this little red spot on my right breast, like the size of a dime. And immediately in my head, it was just like, I have cancer. That's cancer. Like, why would I think that? But my body knew, your soul knows, and it tries to communicate with you. And if you listen,
Yeah.
use. So that was sort of the beginning for me of becoming more aware of how to listen to that inner voice. But I was lucky because my sister-in-law, I called her right away. She was a physician's assistant at Memorial Sloan Kettering in breast and melanoma cancer. And so first thing she said was, "Oh, Kat." And I went, "Oh." Then she went, "Okay, wait." She had to flip her little professional switch. And she said, "Tomorrow morning, this is what you're doing." And she gave me this list of things to do, what to say at the doctor's office. And it was dead on. This is what they'll say. This is what you'll say. This is what they'll say. It was so nice to have that because it gave me something to focus on instead of fear. And so I went in, and of course it played out exactly like she said. And the ultrasound showed something suspicious, and they wanted to do a biopsy. And I wasn't ready to have cancer at that moment. So I just, I'm not going to come back till next Friday. This was like Friday. And they said, "Well, I don't know if that's such a good idea." And I was like, "Well, it's Halloween. I have all these things to do. I've got a field trip with my daughter. I'm going to wait." And that following week, I had the biopsy, and then that's when my sister-in-law said, "I think you have inflammatory breast cancer." And the doctors said, in our area, said, "No, you don't have inflammatory breast cancer. You have a ductal, it's an aggressive ductal carcinoma." And she said, "No, they're not touching you." Now I want these tests. And so I got the other tests, and then the doctor said, "We're so sorry, we were wrong. You do have inflammatory breast cancer." So they didn't tell me at that moment, but it was stage 4. Oh. And before you even know what's going on. So that was Friday. On Tuesday, I was already getting chemo. It was different than what they did here because my sister-in-law had the doctors at Sloan Kettering put together my protocol, which is very different than what they did here. So that was great because we got to bring a different protocol. But, it was very toxic, very hard to take. So I went through chemotherapy, and while I was going through it, I was learning how to use meditation and how to use visualization. And I was feeling a little stronger. And I have a book out. I tell my whole story in there. And it was September the following year, so 2006, that I was diagnosed with a high-grade tumor in my head and neck. Theoretically not connected, but I found this tiny, tiny little study. Both cancers are rare. And this tiny little study that showed a connection to chickenpox, maybe. But I haven't really been able to find anything else. But my second tumor, I was treated at the University Research Hospital, University of Madison. And I asked the oncologist who was the head of oncology, or the radiation oncologist, and he was the head of oncology there, how many people have you had like me? And he said, you're my third with these two cancers, obviously the connection. But it was at that point where I started doing Reiki as well. And I had been kind of dabbling with food as medicine, but not really all in. And I loved actually what you said on your interview with Chris about if you're gonna do it, you gotta do it. If you're gonna be, and I say this all the time to my clients, you're either all in or you're not in at all. And you can't just dabble like I did that first year, obviously, because then I'm diagnosed again, and that's when everything just sort of like exploded, and I realized, oh, I'm supposed to be going down this path of food as medicine. I started with a Reiki master, really upping my game on meditation and visualization work. And, but I didn't leave conventional medicine right away. It was 2008 during one of my meditations. And just for your viewers, I separate prayer from meditation. For me, prayer gets a little beggy, or you're expressing gratitude. But meditation is when you are quiet and open to hear what God wants to tell you, right? Because you're quiet. You don't get to talk. And so learning how to do that and how to listen, that's when I heard, get off the protocol train. This is not how you're dying. Your organs are failing. You're crazy in the head. One of the drugs made me just nuts. I lost my intestinal function. I lost my thyroid. I lost hearing, eyesight. My kidneys and liver were failing. My heart was failing. It's like my lungs were at 82% or something, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it was a lot of air that was missing. So it really came down to, I'm going to be one of those 15 to 20% of people who die from the treatment, or I'm going to do what I think is right, because this is the message I'm getting is get off this train and start engaging your inner healer, start 100% in. And at that point, my oncologist was sort of like, this is not a good idea. But I was 21 months was sort of the average for my stage 4 cancer. And I sort of don't even think about my head and neck cancer because that had an 18% recurrence. So for me, that was like, weirdly, that wasn't the thing I was most worried about.
So when you had your the chemotherapy that at the beginning when you were diagnosed, you got right on the chemotherapy. What kind of chemotherapy were you doing? Was it a specialized or experimental?
I had dose-dense adriamycin and Cytoxan. And then the second round was Taxol, but this friend of mine, actually the guy who wrote my foreword on my book, he had found out about anti-angiogenic chemotherapies, and he mentioned, and food, and he mentioned the Avastin. And he said to me, if they won't give it to you, I will come and give it to you myself, because it was not approved for my treatment. So that was something we added because my oncologist was really great, and he's looked into it. I said, I want you to call the researchers, people working on this. It was at the NIH at that point, and they said, well, we're finding 6 months extended life with it. So, woohoo, I'll take 6 months.
6 months. Wow.
Right. So I said, I'll take that, but it was $10,000 or $15,000 a dose. I mean, it was insane. He somehow got my insurance to cover it.
Yeah.
So I say this to people, like, when your doctor first says no, keep pushing, because eventually they're going to find a way to help you as long as it's clear you want that help. So we added Avastin, which right after got into a big political, quagmire. But for me, it worked well. But that was probably the drug that compromised my heart. And then I did a variety of aromatase inhibitors to inhibit the hormone, which didn't sit well with me. But the one I did end up settling on, aromasin, took out my intestines. And on the fact sheet, they called it mood swings, but I was, raging and crazy in the head. It was insane.
How many total treatments did you do? Do you know the chemotherapy?
So on the adriamycin Cytoxan, I did 4. I did every other week, 4. And then the Taxol Avastin, every other week, 4. So it was 8 total over however many months that is. I used to know the math. I don't remember the math.
I was going to say, and then after that, you realized that you wanted to do something else, and you started looking into, meditation, visualization, and prayer, and all that. And that was how long after you started? Was that again?
So I started. We probably all start prayer right when we're diagnosed.
Yeah.
Not that I wasn't praying before, but you really.
Yeah, I mean, just the fear of everything really gets you to needing some kind of relief somehow or something. Yeah, desperation.
Sure. And then the meditation and visualization work started probably after my first dose of chemo.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It was a judicious way to use my time while I was sitting in the chair for 7 or 8 hours.
Yeah.
This gives me something to do while I'm sitting here instead of mindlessly watching some stupid TV or, I would sleep a little bit because they had, Benadryl in the drugs. But anyway, and then it was a series of surgeries and complications. And then I had non-skin sparing radiation, which they burn all your skin off for the kind of cancer I had. And I just was starting to heal, and then I got diagnosed again. And so with that, when there was no chemotherapy, there was head and neck radiation, which I'm still am managing some of the side effects of, and surgery. And then it was just kind of downhill from there. And that's when I started Reiki, actually.
So they ran you through the mill, in other words.
Yeah. I covered a lot of retirement programs for doctors and drug company people.
Oh, yeah. So then you got into Reiki, and then the Reiki, you feel like that was one of the big...
Reiki was huge for me. Yeah. It was, with what Reiki does for you is it helps you shed all the emotional stuff. There's cancer therapists, and I went that route. You go to therapy, and just a lot of talk and not necessarily a lot of resolution or release. And the beautiful thing about energy work is you don't even have to talk. It works to help you release it. Things you didn't even know you needed to release. You're crying on the table. It's like, oh, where did that come from? Go with it. Just let it go.
Yeah.
Let it release. And I have to admit, I was like weirded out by Reiki in the beginning.
Yeah.
It was really different, and I didn't really know what it was, but it was actually my my radiation oncologist, because I went a couple times and I thought, I don't know if I want to do this again. This is really weird.
Yeah.
And my Reiki was always on Tuesday. Well, wasn't on that many weeks, but when I had it, it was on a Tuesday. And so I had it in the beginning, and my radiation oncologist said, what are you doing? And I was like, what? And he said, what are you doing at home? And then we got around to I'm doing Reiki. And he said, what day do you have Reiki? And I said, Tuesday. And he said, I can tell. Monday and Tuesday, you come in dragging your feet. Wednesday, you're skipping down the hall. Your whole attitude has changed. You don't have the same side effects everyone else has. I need to look into this. And then it was not too long after that, UW-Madison started the Integrative Medicine Clinic, where they offer all these things. But so yeah, I feel like I was doing Reiki a lot more often than I was. And my Reiki master, when my book came out, he said, I only have one correction. He said, you wrote like you were getting Reiki all the time, but I only gave it to you for seven times over a few years. And that's amazing. And I've since learned Reiki just keeps working, right? And anybody can call Reiki, to work in their body because it's universal energy. So, it comes from that one source, whatever you believe that source to be. But most religions have one God, even Hindus, they have lots of little gods, but there's one main God, and that's where it comes from. And so I did that, but I was all in on the food. We started growing our own food. We had a 60-acre farm, and we grew like 70 or 80% of our food for about 7 years. Chickens, and we'd have a cow every year for my husband.
So you changed your diet after the chemotherapy, and or while you were doing the chemotherapy.
So I like that question because I was a vegan for 4 years. Then I was a vegetarian, and when I was pregnant, I started eating some animal protein, and my kids had animal protein because their young brains need the amino acids to develop.
Yes.
So adults do okay with vegan, but little kids need more. So my diet was super healthy. So the change that I made was eating nutritiously to eating food as medicine. Eating specifically for the cancer, to kill the cancer, which includes foods that are anti-angiogenic, so angiogenesis, for your viewers, is the development of blood vessels or the growth of blood vessels. Anti-angiogenic is obviously like stopping the growth of blood vessels.
For the cancer cells, yeah.
Correct. So cancer needs those blood cells or the blood vessels to feed it.
Yes.
And so it reprograms our body to feed it instead of, other parts of our body. And so these foods, much like Avastin, the chemo that was added, they cut the blood supply to the cancer. And so I did a little with angiogenic foods that first year, but it wasn't until my second diagnosis that I said, okay, clearly I got kicked in the butt here for a reason. Like, you're going to change your diet. You're going to change the way you look at food. So it's foods like the cruciferous foods, kale, cabbage, cauliflower, garlic, onions, leeks, which is one a lot of people never talk about, but leeks are really at the top of the list.
The aliens, yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. And lots and lots of berries, strawberries, blueberries, cranberries, black raspberries. I use black raspberry powder, made specifically with Berry Health out on the West Coast. They have a specific way they develop it that maintains the whole food integrity of their powder. So you're actually getting all of the polyphenols and anthocyanins.
Yeah.
And so it was just a real heavy focus on those kind of foods. And then when I ate animal products, for example, chicken eggs, because we grew our own, our chickens were grass fed. So they were out in the pasture eating bugs, eating grass, doing what they're supposed to do. because what we mostly don't understand is that omega-3 fatty acid, which is a necessary fatty acid, but it reduces inflammation in our body.
Mm-hmm.
And when livestock, whether it's cows, pork, chicken, whatever, are out eating the way they were meant to eat, meaning not eating corn and grain feed,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but they're out in the field, they become very high in omega fatty acid 3, which translates over to us and reduces inflammation in our body. But when we grow and eat food the way it's mostly grown now on feedlots and jammed all together, eating grain, even farm-raised fish, eating grain like that. No, that's not how it works. They become very high in omega fatty acid 6, which increases inflammation. And so if you kind of compare charts back to the end of World War II, when all those chemical plants needed something to do, we started overproducing sugar, and we started pulling livestock onto these feedlots and feeding them. And then you look at the rates of cancer, all the different cancers, and they correlate directly with the.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so sad. So
you want to just stay on an anti-inflammatory diet is so important.
So important, and to really know and understand where your food comes from. So this is an insane example that one of my clients just gave me the other day. And all of the education I do, he said, well, I'm getting my eggs from a local farmer now, and they're grass-fed, or they're cage-free. And he said, the yolks are really dark. And I said, well, that's a good sign. That means that, she's letting them eat grass and bugs. And he goes, oh, no, you know how she gets her yolks so dark? And I was like, is there another way? He said, she adds paprika to their feed.
Oh, wow.
Paprika,
I didn't know that. Yeah, I didn't know they would. That would work. Yeah.
And he said, isn't that great? And I was like, no, no, that's not okay. That's just more games. Like, no, that's not the right kind of food. So it's really, you kind of have to support your local farmers. You be getting and we know that when food is picked, produce in particular is picked, in 3 days, it loses 30% of its nutritional value. So you have to support your local farmers, And we also have to get to this, thing where organic food is priced properly.
Yes.
Because it's not as expensive to grow organic as it is conventional, but it became trendy, right? So I've asked organic farmers, why do you charge so much? And they say, because I can. People buy it. And to me, that's backwards. So my work is all around sustainability. What can people?
And the more people that eat organic, the less the better it's going to be for people as far as financially and everything else. The supply and demand, the more competition. You're right. I mean, it's kind of like, oh, well, we've got this niche and we can charge you what we want. And then you got people that want to eat healthier, but they can't afford it.
That's right. And I look at it as kind of like my true healthcare reform picture is supporting local farmers to grow organic, having clean food, clean water, clean air, healthy people, not going bankrupt because of healthcare costs, not homesick and missing work because they're sick, kids who aren't getting sick. So now you have more money going into your local economy because people are healthy and they're, not wasting their money on drugs and supplements and everything else. And you do that little circle around your local communities, you're going to create a much more sustainable, much healthier, even economically healthier community. So
yes. So you changed your diet. You started eating locally raised food. You raised a lot of your own food. You were eating cruciferous vegetables, all the healthiest stuff you could get a hold of. And then what did you do? What else did you do?
Well, so then it was really about just changing. Well, so leading up to that, my whole life was a career was in nonprofits, which is a very stressful place to work. Long hours, low pay, heavy demands. I did a lot of writing legislation for Congress and Senate, and it's not a healthy environment.
Yeah.
And so I was the chronic volunteer outside of that. I don't even know where. I did border collie rescue and volunteering with the kids, and so I really had to just strip it down and focus on myself, because I do think I would not have gotten to my full health had I continued kind of any of those things. So I stripped everything down. I stopped all my volunteer activity. I just was meditating, doing Reiki, doing visualization work for hours on end. And then in 2009, when my cancer still wasn't coming back, and I correct myself because I tried really hard not to call it my cancer.
Yeah.
The cancer. It didn't come back. And my hospital asked me to speak to their leadership conference, which was hundreds and hundreds of employees. And they said, tell us what we did right and tell us what we did wrong. And I was kind of like, really? Because I'll tell you what you did wrong. They said, yes, absolutely. Tell us what we did wrong. And then I had a standing ovation, and the CEO from the hospital came over and said, my door is always open. Tell me what we need to do. So my chemo brain, I was trying to write, so I came up with this 4-page summary of what I wanted to do, like my utopian pie in the sky, this is what I want, and I want to do it in the hospital. And when I met with him, he said, I love this, except we have to have a nonprofit to do it, because he was going to be retiring, which I didn't know at that time. And so we started a nonprofit, much to my chagrin, because although it's kind of the low-hanging fruit for me, it's easy to do. I know how to do it. So we got this nonprofit going. It was hugely successful. We raised, $500,000 in the first 2 years for this community-based organization teaching how to use food as medicine. And we were working with, the different hospitals in the area, the insurance companies, corporations, the schools, individuals, farmers, doing information on value-added farming. If you add these foods and you market them as food as medicine, which they are, you will get people, because we also grew food. I called it the pizza garden, so that we could get kids in. And of course, everybody likes pizza. So we have a local bakery. They make sprouted grain dough, pizza dough and buns. And so they donated, and we grew our own food. And then I got a bunch of chefs in the area to donate their time, and we'd bring the kids out for classes. And so the rule was that you could pick whatever you wanted in the garden, but whatever you picked had to go on your pizza.
Oh. And
so these kids, and the parents would always be very apologetic. My kids don't like vegetables, don't be offended. And then by the end, the parents would say, how did you get my kids to eat vegetables? It's like, well, one, they're grown clean, so the flavor is just busting out.
Yeah.
Two, they're involved. They're involved in their own meal, and it's fun. And so they're putting beans and carrots and all kinds of things on their pizzas. And our local trade college, our technical college, the masonry department built us a pizza oven. So it was beautiful, but it was just so much of my time. And then at the same time, my dad was diagnosed with esophageal, and he was dying during that time. And it was really just a terrible reminder that, I'm going to go the same way if I don't stop. And then in one of my talks, one of the presentations I was giving, there was a gentleman in the front, and he was quiet the whole time. And I do these, occasionally I'll do these like 35 max people kind of coaching talks where small enough that everybody has an opportunity to talk if they want to. And he was very quiet. And at the very end, he said, I just have one thing to say. When I was diagnosed, I was sitting in the clinic, and there was an article about this woman in my newspaper and how she beat cancer. And he's talking about me. And he said, and one of the books that she recommended was the anti-cancer book by David Servan Schreiber, who's kind of a pioneer in this area. And he was accidentally diagnosed with a brain tumor, went through chemo, came back a couple times. He finally turned to food, and he lived for 20 years. Had a baby, had a great life, and really dedicated his life to teaching about food as medicine. And this gentleman's, one of his doctors, was friends with David Servan Schreiber, and he said, so David was out teaching all these other people. He got himself so stressed again that the cancer was able to take hold, and then he died. And he looks at me, he said, don't do that.
Yeah, stress is such a big, is really a big one, you gotta somehow or another. And that's hard for people, not only like you changed your diet, you tried to get rid of the stress as much as you could, you meditated, to help relax that stress, to relax your body, to relax your mind, body, spirit, and you changed your diet. Now, did you do any like supplementation? Are you into that or?
So I am not a fan of supplements, though I say that cautionary because there is a place for them.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, I take everyday fish oil. So one of the things that, one of my side effects from the chemotherapy was my cholesterol got all messed up, which I never had.
Yeah.
And so that helps keep it in check. I take vitamin D3, which unless you're outside all the time, you probably should be taking that. And especially up here you're in Idaho, in Wisconsin, with our long winters.
We get a lot of cloudy days.
Yeah, and vitamin D3 is a hormone that runs huge parts of our bodies. Yeah. It's important to have it. Now they've also linked it to infertility, low vitamin D3. So that one's really important. When I have moments of, oh boy, am I still okay? Because you still get that, I'm 14 years out and I still get this, like, is it going to come back? Then I add Longvita, turmeric or curcumin. I'll add that, but that's always kind of a temporary thing. That's a fear-based addition. But while I was sick, I was taking it.
Yes.
I do use black raspberry powder intermittently. My kids love it in their smoothies. So, and then I think that's mostly what I do now. When I was sick still, my integrative medicine doctor taught me, so my heart was failing and my hospital wanted to put me on all kinds of heart meds. And they did. And I went to see him because I was like, this is not right. Trusting your inner voice, it just didn't feel right. And he said, no. We're taking off all that. And you're going to do high doses of CoQ10. Within 5 weeks, my ejection fraction rate, which is how your heart is pumping, went from 42 to 52 in 5 weeks.
Yeah.
My liver and kidneys were failing, of course, from all the drugs that they were putting. And he put me on milk thistle and dandelion root for 5 weeks, and all my numbers went right back to normal. So there's definitely a place for supplements, and you have to know how to use them. And I know, so listening to you with the worms and, the parasites, it's important. We used to make black walnut tincture on the farm. And so I just think the trap of supplements is, if you read an article here, oh, this is good for me. And then, oh, I read that article, or this person's taking that, or so. Suddenly you've got this giant pile of supplements that actually is starting to create stress in your body. Because really the best way for us to get nutrients is through our food. And supplementation is used when you're struggling with that, or you have a specific need, so I'm kind of on this, it's a little like medicine, of course not as dangerous, but you just have to be more knowledgeable, or
Yeah.
work with somebody who's knowledgeable.
Yeah.
So
I think,
I just know how to identify high quality products.
yeah.
That's
I think most of the people that I've interviewed, a lot of people that take a lot of supplements and do supplements, they're kind of like really focused on the anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory supplements, like you said, the curcumin
yeah,
and berberine and quercetin and those kind of things, and vitamin C and things like that. But I find that, I mean, you're right. People need to know a little bit about what they're doing and not just think that they can just do that and nothing else.
right.
And the diet is so important. And if you can grow your own food, or you can get locally raised, because you're right, 3 days and the energy dissipates.
Right.
And people are eating basically dead food out there, and especially if it's not organic, they're going to get all these pesticides and heavy metals, and well, you can get that in organic foods too, because but it's better. You're going to have less toxicity,
Yeah.
and real food. The body needs real food, and when you started eating the real food,
Yeah.
you started to heal. It sounds like that's really what that and the relaxing and the Reiki and the meditation.
Clearing that emotional stuff out,
Yeah.
and unburdening. One of the things that I remind myself every day of is observe,
Mm-hmm.
don't absorb. And so when people around me are, their energy is not right or whatever, I try to have compassion and just observe it. I don't need to have any of that in my space, so I try to imagine myself walking around with a bubble, or if I start feeling stressed about something, I try to step back and just observe that. Like, I don't have to hold that stress. Almost like in meditation, when a thought pops in your brain, you observe it and then you let it go, and it's trying to move through your life that way. It's definitely a practice, just like meditation. And we're humans, so every day we're being challenged with that,
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
practice.
Now, was there anything else that you feel was very important in your healing that we haven't talked about?
I don't know. I don't think it's super complicated. I think I guess the other thing I would say is that, know yourself. So when you go into a doctor's appointment and your doctor is telling you need these things, and your body is saying, no, I don't think I do, be okay with questioning. People have been coming to me for quite a while as clients, and then they'll report back to me some conversation they had with their doctor, and I'd say, what happened to questioning, encouraging your doctor to be curious? Like a ridiculous story that's so simple, but my 15-year-old got a fourth concussion last September. She was at a football game and got hit in the head with football. And that set off a whole wave of things. And she was having a lot of trouble with her eyesight. She was getting dizzy. Her eyesight was just cut out when she was at school. She'd get faint, all these things. So we're at the specialty clinic at Children's for concussion. And they are wanting to put her through physical therapy, but it's not doing anything. So then they fall back on drugs. And we have these prescription drugs for her headaches and for this and that. This went on for 4 or 5 months. And I said, I'm not giving her drugs. So I'm putting together my, concoction of feverfew and B2 and B12, like getting her all the things for brain health. And finally, I'm starting to question myself, like, she's struggling so much at school and not sleeping. And so we go back to the neuro ophthalmologist, and I say, he looks at her, all the same, drugs, same list. And I said, okay, we're going to play a little game. This is one of the things I do sometimes with my clients. And he's looking at me like, yeah, no. And I said, yeah. So I said, so I want you to imagine that you are practicing the art of medicine. That medicine sits in the technological medicine that you practice sits out somewhere else. We're not there. Mm-hmm. We're looking at the creative art connection to people practice. And I want you to just sit with that for a minute. He's ticked off. So obviously ticked off.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, now that we're there, I want you to take a minute and I want you to remember whatever you've heard, whatever you've read, or whatever you've learned at one of your conferences. And I want you to tell me what can help my daughter that's not drug related. And he sat there for a minute and then bing, he said, there's special glasses for that. And I was like, 5 months and you're telling me there's special glasses? And he said, yeah, right? There's a doctor across the hall who makes them. So we go to that guy across the hall and he's livid. I have been here for 5 years making glasses for these kids. Why didn't he send you here?
Yeah.
The solution was a pair of glasses like, Bono with the blue lenses, because they tested her on different colors. And when the blue lens went in, the headaches went away. So she wears those in school.
Wow.
No problem.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that was something that I did learn how to do, is to be my own advocate, which is why my book is called Eat, but it's Evolve, Advocate, and Transform. And
tell us how they can get your book.
Oh, I mean, anywhere books are sold. Amazon's got it.
And tell us the name of it again.
So it's called Eat, an unconventional decade in the life of a cancer patient.
Great. That's wonderful. Well, I'll have to get that book. That's very... We
don't need to be conventional.
No. Well, it's been great, Kathy. And is there anything else that we need to let them know, or I think we got it covered?
I think you'll link to my website, or
can you want to give that out? Give your website out again.
It's so not clever and very, very long. It's my name, so it's www.kathymydlackbero.com. So KATHYMYDLACHBERO. Now you know why I need a publicist. You're an agent.
Well, Kathy, it's been a pleasure talking with you, and congratulations on all your success, and keep up the good work. And
you as well. Thank you.
I look forward to speaking to you again sometime. And Kathy Bero, everyone, and you have a wonderful summer.
Yeah, you too, James. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thank you.